So today, we're going to trace the incredible, evolving story of a divine warrior. It's a journey that starts with ancient prophecies of a conquering king and ends with a vision of a final cosmic battle at the very end of time.
Let's just kick things off with this question because it gets right to the heart of this whole story. A story that completely flips our expectations about power, warfare, and what it really means to win. All right, so our story really begins in ancient Israel. Now, you have to imagine this. For centuries, these people lived under the rule of one foreign empire after another. But through it all, they held on to this powerful hope, a promise of a divine warrior who would one day come and save them. And look at this timeline. This wasn't just a short-term problem. We're talking about the Babylonians, then the Persians, then the Greeks, and finally the Romans. Generation after generation lived under foreign rule. And it's right in the middle of all this that the prophets began to share these incredible visions of hope.
Okay, so let's dive into one of the most famous and powerful of these visions. This one comes from the prophet Daniel, who is living as an exile right in the heart of the Babylonian Empire when he saw this stunning picture of the future. So what does Daniel see? It's this wild vision of four terrifying hybrid beasts crawling out of a chaotic sea. But here's the thing. These aren't just random monsters. They're symbols. Each one stands for a ruthless, oppressive, and ultimately chaotic human kingdom, one rising right after the other to dominate the people. And this really lays out the core conflict of the whole vision, doesn't it? On one side, you have the temporary, beastly kingdoms of humanity, all defined by chaos and cruelty. And on the other, you have the promise of God's kingdom, which is just, eternal, and in the end, victorious. So, right when things look their absolute worst, with that final, terrifying beast on the scene, the whole perspective just shifts. It's like the camera suddenly pulls away from all the chaos on earth and zooms right into the order and power of God's throne room in heaven. And this is the moment everything has been building towards. A figure who looks human, called the Son of Man, arrives on the clouds, which was always a symbol of God's presence. He's brought before God and is given an eternal kingdom. This is it. This is the promise, a divine warrior who will finally, once and for all, overcome the beastly empires of the world. Okay, so let's fast forward a few centuries. By the time we get to the New Testament, the expectation for this warrior king is at a fever pitch. I mean, people are literally on the edge of their seats, waiting for this Son of Man to show up and kick out their Roman oppressors. And this is where things get, well, confusing for everybody back then. On one hand, you've got John the Baptist, the prophet announcing the Messiah's arrival. And he's preaching exactly what people expected, a warrior of judgment with an axe to chop down evil and unquenchable fire. But then, Jesus arrives, and his ministry looks completely different. He's healing people, preaching good news to the poor, and casting out demons. So you can see why this raised a huge question, one that even John himself started to wonder about from his prison cell. Did he get it wrong? Was Jesus not the one they'd all been waiting for? I mean, where was the axe? Where was the fire? And the answer, well, it's basically the giant plot twist of the whole story. No, John wasn't wrong. He, like all the prophets before him, just didn't have the full picture. The plan was so much bigger and the battle was so much deeper than anyone had ever imagined. See, here's the point you absolutely have to get. Jesus didn't show up to avoid a battle. He came to heighten it, to intensify it. But he did it by totally redefining the enemy and the very nature of the war itself. Jesus' target wasn't the Roman soldiers or Caesar. His fight was with the source of all human evil and oppression, what the Bible calls the spiritual powers and authorities. He wasn't just fighting the symptoms, he was declaring war on the disease itself. So how do you fight an enemy like that? Well, his strategy was completely unheard of. Instead of raising an army to kill his enemies, he would defeat them by dying himself. It's this radical, totally counterintuitive idea that the ultimate act of power is an act of sacrificial love. And what's so wild is that the New Testament writers, they actually talk about the crucifixion using military language. They don't see it as some tragic defeat. For them, it was a victory parade. The cross became the very place where Jesus disarmed those spiritual forces of evil and put them on display in a public triumph. Okay, but wait. What about John the Baptist's vision? What about all that fire and judgment? Well, that part of the prophecy wasn't wrong. It was just pointing to something still in the future.
the warrior's second and final return. And for that, we turn to the final book of the Bible, Revelation, which paints this unbelievably cinematic picture. Heaven rips open and the warrior appears, but this time he's not on a donkey. He's on a white horse, which is the symbol of a conquering king. And now all that powerful imagery from the ancient prophecies comes rushing back. He is a warrior, yes, but one who judges and wages war with perfect justice. His eyes are like fire, and he's not just wearing one crown. He has many crowns, showing his ultimate authority over every other kingdom. And check this out. This highlights his final victory. The weapon he uses isn't a physical blade. It's a sharp sword coming from his mouth, representing the unstoppable power of his word and his truth. And his identity is undeniable, written right there on his robe for everyone to see. King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So it all brings us back to where we started, doesn't it? Back to a question. When you trace this whole story, from a conquering king to a sacrificial savior and then finally to a returning judge, it really forces us to rethink our own ideas. What does a journey like that teach us about where real strength is found and what it actually means to win?